Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Game 2 of this best of 3 Zerg vs Zerg series between Souleer in the purple and Liquid's TLO, sporting green this time round, in the bottom right. If you didn't see the first game of this series, TLO has a 1-0 lead in this best of 3, and it came off of the back of some excellent defense. Souleer went for an early pull and used that early pull to put on some Zergling aggression that TLO defended very well with the excellent use of an early Baneling nest, some queens on a ramp, and transfuse. And yeah, he just kind of outlasted the Ling aggression that was thrown at him from Souleer. We did see Souleer go up to the second base and then just use it as production. So, although he had the base and could potentially have saturated it, he continued to produce Zerglings and nothing else, and that kind of bit him in the ass at the end of game 1. So, let's talk about game number 2. It looks like we're about to have a very similar game, or at least a very similar opening. We have the earlier pool for Souleer and the earlier hatchery for TLO, but both players aren't slacking on getting the pool. We don't have any triple hatch before pool from TLO or anything like that. The pool will be up in time, like last game, to fend off any aggression coming in from the 4 Zerglings that Souleer could run across the map, rather. It does seem, though, that we are going to have a little bit more ramp-up time, perhaps, in this game. It's not quite as early a speed coming out of Souleer. And the second hatchery, well, if he saturates it, will put him in a good position to enter a slightly more normal state of the game. TLO here is, just also saturating his base, so it's going to be a couple of seconds before we see what these players are truly committing to. But, based on game number 1, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Souleer being the aggressive player. I don't know if it's typical of him to Ling Rush, or whether this is just that he feels like he has to do something to get an early lead over TLO. And that was a nice fight for TLO. He picked off quite a few of those early Lings, and defended the hatchery. There wasn't a lot of scouting information gained, only the fact that TLO has taken his natural, which I believe was already spotted by an Overlord. Let's see what Souleer sees here. He knows about the hatchery. Yeah, and not about much else. So, if we switch back to everyone's vision, we can see that TLO is likely committing to roaches this game rather than Zerglings, whereas with the metabolic boost, it seems that we are, and indeed the Zerg melee attacks, we are going to see Lings again from Souleer, although this time he's going to have a slightly better economy to do it. He's got a second base, he has saturated it slightly this time, and that will put him in a better position to transition out of any Ling aggression should it go poorly. And indeed, TLO is going to be going for roaches as he starts the missile attacks level 1 and his roach warren on this side of the map. Roaches versus Zerglings it's not necessarily as one-sided as you would think. The more roaches there are, the harder time Lings have. The better upgrades the roaches have, the harder a time Lings have of dealing with them. But with +1 attack, and with 26 of them being built right now by Souleer, if they can get a good surround and some good positioning for a team fight, they will chew through roaches reasonably quickly. So it's not a foregone conclusion just because TLO has gone roaches. I would like to see, with the scout that Souleer just gained, either he puts down a Baneling nest or some tech of his own, because Banelings, although they're not fantastic against roaches, the splash damage can really help punch through, particularly if you've got a good Lynx around. It doesn't look like we're going to see that, though. It looks like we're seeing Souleer building a defensive spine crawler because he sees the small number of roaches pushing out across the map, and he's keeping all of his Lings at home. He's not being particularly aggressive right now, and I wonder if this is because TLO hasn't scouted the sheer number of Lings that he's building. Souleer has put up a third base, that will give him the potential to flood a lot of lings across the map, but he has stopped making drones, and that begs the question whether or not he is ever going to saturate the space, or if it's just going to be, as it was in game number 1, a ling production facility. We have nice positioning here for TLO. Obviously, these roaches are eventually going to get chewed through by the sheer number of roaches and with the help of that spine crawler. But they did get into a good position and kill quite a few of Souleer's lings. We are seeing a ling poke across the other side of the map, but again with the evolution chamber wall and a queen standing ready, it didn't have transfuse energy that time, but it wouldn't have mattered, to defend TLO's second, and his natural is perfectly safe. Even despite this, we're seeing the mineral line positioning that we often see Marines used to just keep that roach alive a little bit longer and do a little bit more damage to Souleer's forces. We are seeing Souleer slowly pump out a couple of drones, so this isn't necessarily as all-in as the first game, but we are seeing TLO get secondary roach upgrades and keep pumping out roaches, and I am getting really worried for Souleer. Eventually his lings just won't be able to cut fighting these roaches, particularly with the tier 2 missile attacks, and TLO is just going to have an opportunity to move out across the map. And as I said earlier, roaches do better against lings the more of them they are and the better upgraded they are. So with no gases taken bar 1, which isn't even mining on Souleer's side of the map, these roaches are going to be extremely efficient. And I want to highlight that TLO is dropping a creep highway. He's not had a huge amount of map control this game, bar the early push out towards the third, with the lings of Souleer controlling most of the dead space. But to get around that and to get his roaches, and indeed if he wants to, his queens across the map faster to support the attack, he's got got overlords dropping this nice creep highway here, which will help him get across the map quicker to be aggressive, should that be what he wants to do. And I think it is. We're not seeing TLO poke out and take a third, even though he knows that Souleer has one. We're seeing more roach production, and although the supplies are kind of deceptive whenever you have roaches out, you can see that TLO is just in a very strong position. Looking at the supplies, looking at the units tab, you can see it's 129 zerglings but 41 roaches, and with +2 attack, these roaches are going to tear through the lings, and this is lovely positioning from TLO here. Although the +2 hasn't quite finished, he's got himself into a nice corner, and those Ravager cocoons are getting in the way of the lings getting on top of the roaches, denying them that all-important surface area. And you can see if we look at the units tab right now, that was over 100 a second ago, and 20 roaches have traded themselves out for over 100 zerglings, winning that fight very convincingly, and Souleer taps out. And I don't blame him. That was a very convincing game from TLO. He defended the aggression nicely and kept himself perfectly safe using the Evo Chamber wall while he built up a roach force that Souleer simply couldn't deal with. And that's the series, a quick 2-0 for TLO. I'm a little bit disappointed that both games went the same way, because while the mass ling style was interesting, it really did feel that, particularly in game number 2, after seeing it in game number 1, that TLO was just all over it, and that there was never really a chance for Souleer to do anything. But hey ho, there we go. I hope you've enjoyed the cast and the games. Look forward to seeing some more in future from me. I'm looking to do either TLO versus Serral, or Zest versus, I believe it's Hero Marine. So yeah, expect to see them on the channel very shortly. Thanks for watching, guys.